It's Self-Management Unit 3, the second of the 2 tools units, this one on cognitive and affective tools. I like to go to the overview, just check where we're at, get context. Okay, we did intro, behavioral tools, the antecedent and the consequence control, and now we're doing cognitive and affective tools. And antecedent and consequence tools are all part of the behavioral theory-based tool group. They kind of operate at similar levels by and large, although I think consequences are far more complex than antecedents, at least in terms of applications in self-management, all those different types of reinforcement and punishment and the schedules of reinforcement and punishment, frankly, that makes them a bit more complex. But for cognitive and affective tools, these are really different. These come from very different theoretical frameworks, in my view, and different histories, really different philosophies. The cognitive are extensions, by and large, of the behavioral tools, very research-based, a lot of theory behind them. The affective tools, well, you'll read about it, but the model is very different. Harkens back to some Freudian models and also forward to some humanistic and Eastern models. It's very diverse toolbox, and probably the most growth. Well, there's a lot of growth in all these areas, but particularly cognitive and particularly the affective tools group. So we got 2 exams, one on the cognitive tools, one on the affective tools, and then a cognitive and affective tool log. This is a good one to begin as early as you can. There's 2 weeks for this unit to do 1 entry a day, and that gives you a day to mess up or one where the entry just wasn't good, but still you can proceed and get this all done early. 50 points for the 2 exams combined, 25 each, and 50 there, and that's more than you needed to know. All right, hitting the back arrow on my browser, close this, open up cognitive and affective tools. By the way, after this, we're getting into the 4-unit big self-management project, but we don't begin it yet. There's an explanation of that here. It's always good to open these up, give them a read. This is the unit tour and advice. Of course, you're listening to this right now. And this is a separate video, advice for the tools log. And this, I just watched this again. I think you might enjoy it. Of course, you can make it on full screen here. This is a koan about Eastern and Western tools. Cognitive tools are more Western, affective tools more Eastern. I'll let the koan and the video speak for itself. This is a video of videos. I hope you find it interesting and fun. Okay, going back out here, that's the general introduction, and then we delve into cognitive tools. There's readings, I throw in some comedy, there's an exam, there's apps, and then the same for affective tools, some readings, not just my book chapter, some apps, and then information on anxiety reduction, a video by a former AU student, a former AU graduate student in our clinical PhD program. And then I'll delve into each of these a little more here on this tour. There's an exam on affective tools, extra credit for completing those both 48 or more hours before the unit deadline, and then the log, which I hope you'll start early, actually. I should probably place these early in the unit, but I talk about it early. The templates here, an example, the upload link, extra credit there, and then, of course, the discussion, which you can always make an entry in all the way up to the deadline for the entire unit. This is just a topic you might read, and then you can post to the discussion, really anything related to the unit. Let's delve into these a little more, cognitive and affective tools. So you have the iBooks and the PDF version of my chapters in this area. Notice there's 2 other things too, but let's delve into this. There's a few things that takes a while to load sometimes. I want to show you. All right. So this is, I download this PDF so you can read it offline. Here's, of course, the little download arrow link tray thing. But let's look at a few things you can see right here. I have a review again of where affective and cognitive tools fit relative to behavioral tools. This can take on new meaning after you've gotten into the behavioral techniques. the most effective applications and what they're best for is discussed here, and research too. There's more and more research, by the way, on affective techniques. And then the steps in what I will call meta self-management. It's a problem-solving cycle. You'll recognize this actually as a cognitive technique. And there's a lot of nice detail here. And cognitive tools, there's the right heading. I ought to make this actually a little smaller so you can see more. I made this format more friendly. If I can make this a little larger, yeah, it's not too bad, is it? Okay. So here I go into, well, starting off with my attempt at a literary introduction. Here's the basic model of human information processing. Cognitive models are actually very computerish. I go into this more in terms of defining the different elements of the model, and then there's some examples of several cognitive techniques. One of the biggest ones, self-instruction. Now, of course, as you do your cognitive and affective tool logging, these cognitive techniques, what to call them, what they are, becomes more and more relevant. But I think you'll find you use a lot of these already. So I start off with a basic introduction, an example. Notice there's a lot of steps in here because there's a sequence. That's really crucial here. A little more on it, and some ways of using self-instructions to tackle a specific problem that's very common, speech anxiety. Basic steps, I always have that for the techniques, and then a table about the different types of self-statements and self-instructions. Action, coping, evaluative, and analytic. And you want to specify in that tools log the type of self-instruction or self-statement, not just, hey, I used a self-instruction, but what type? Details on that, examples on that, go on for a few pages. All right, and now we get to a variety of self-instructions, including irrational and rational analytic, and then the next basic technique, modeling. And there's several different types of modeling too. All right, notice there's when I bold something like participant modeling, that's something to zero in on and try to understand better. Again, the basic steps and so on, and you see how this goes. An example in terms of getting a job, this is planning, right? Macro, meso, micro plans. Here's a diagram that illustrates hierarchy in a way that you may not think of hierarchy. A lot of people think of hierarchy in terms of a straight series of events, kind of like an anxiety hierarchy in systematic desensitization. This is a bit different. A true hierarchy is kind of like a house of cards, not in terms of its fragility, although it may be, but in terms of you have just a few cards at the top, like one general macro level goal, look for a job, and then there's sub steps, and there may be sequences there. And then even within updating your resume, there's sub steps, like finding out where the heck it is in your hard drive or cloud, and then finding a good, this is a little old, finding a good keyboard, how's that? I haven't even seen a typewriter or owned a typewriter in decades. Oh my gosh, well, that shows you how long ago I wrote this thing. But I did try to update it. This is a figure, and it's kind of hard to update the figures that are done very nicely. More examples here, and it just goes on and on. You see how this works, I guess. Let me see if I can actually make my way back. Not so much. Okay, let's see if I can actually get back to any place. All right. There we go. In addition to those readings, there's a few other things to check out here. The planning backwards, a very interesting article here. And then the problem-solving tool wheel. I recently saw this used in an evaluation scheme. That's kind of interesting, I think. But I'll let you check that out because I don't have to click on everything there is here, right? I try for a comedic take. Here's two. One, a very short video suggested by a former student. And then here, a great illustration of some self-instructions. You can tell me which types these are, maybe in the discussion. And then going back, and apps. There's a variety of apps here. These are not endorsements. These are just apps There's even a paper app here and a video by someone who developed it, who was a student who just graduated recently from UCLA, not AU. I do have an AU example or two in here. There's readings for, it's always the exam, and then readings for affective tools, again, from my books, and then a PDF on mindful eating. I think it's really interesting, and then meditation. All these are part of the affective tool set or tool tray. It's a really interesting and sometimes very powerful set of tools. You've always wanted an excuse for learning more about meditation, the different types, they're all detailed in there. And there are, of course, apps here as well. These are just a few, not endorsements again. Some of these work for Android and iPhone, and many work for both. There's some research on a meditation app. Ooh, I need to change that. That's not medication. That's meditation. Spell checker. Not my fault. Yeah, right. All right. I'll change that by the time you see it, probably. And then here, this video that I told you about earlier, this is by a former teaching assistant of mine in theories of personality, actually, and a former clinical PhD student, Sarah. And she recorded this at the start of the pandemic to help AU students get a better idea of what to do. It's really good. As you'll see, she comes from a wealth of experience in this area as a clinician for many years and working with some very serious cases. All right, here's the tools project. I have a talk on that separate. Here's the discussion area where you click on this, and the idea of chemical manipulation of affect, which many of us do with a little bit of tea or coffee sometimes, or I got some herbal tea brewing right now. It's got some chemicals too, I'm sure, that affect mood, hopefully in a positive way. Anyway, that's a quick tour for now. I hope you get a lot out of this. This opens up several new whole vistas in self-management, that the behavioral techniques, which you might have been kind of familiar with already because they are taught in other psych classes. There's some new stuff here. Mindfulness you probably got in some other classes in health or psych, but the combination here, well, if you've had these before, I think a review won't be harmful, but there's a lot of new stuff here for most of us. Enjoy.